to first. The Angels have no hit. The Seattle Mariners racing back to the track. Gone! Big fly for Mike Trout. There it is. Hit number 3,000 for Albert Pujols. Gone! Big fly, Ohtani shot. Walshot leaps up, and he got it. Oh, my! Jerry has no hit. The Minnesota Twins. The Angels, world champions.
Hello and welcome to a second episode of Season 7 of Halfway Around the Halo, a LA Angels UK podcast. I am Nick Wright, your host at LA Angels UK, and I'm delighted to be rejoined for this upcoming season by Toby Barnes. Toby, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited. Obviously, it's spring training. The optimism is in full flow. So I mean, we'll see how both of us are feeling as we progress through the episode.
Yeah, I know. And that is the thing. I mean, last year it just got away from us, didn't it? Both as a team and as a podcast. I think both of us got to that mid-season point. We started the season strong and just it is really hard to stick with something like this and commit to it when the team are just diabolical. And last year was a real low for us. We've had some lows. Obviously, you started following the team a lot later than I did, and I've had some highs in that time. You have really only ever had lows. So, but last year just felt that extra bit, right?
Yeah, I think obviously on top of everything else, losing Shohei and then kind of just from there it was kind of a bit of a downward thing. And then you started off season bit of promise and then it just kind of goes. And then kind of obviously we are probably the rare kind of people who will stay up at all hours to watch the Angels. But when it gets to a point where it's kind of how high you're picking in the draft, whereas kind of how many games you're going to win. It kind of gets harder and harder to kind of stay up and watch. So yeah, understandably, we kind of fell off a little bit.
Yeah, and it's an apology from us to the three fans we have out there who I know I was getting messages about when we're going to get a new pod out, when we're going to record, etc. But I think life got in the way. The Angels just sucking, just it got to us. But we're back. We're ready. We're enthusiastic as much as you can be, ready to go. We obviously are doing a second podcast in a week. Managed to get that chat in with Michael Peterson earlier this week, which was, if you haven't heard it yet, fantastic chat. What a top bloke. Team GB picture, like the perfect combination of a guest to start the year for us. Thank you to the Angels for hooking that up for me as well. Really appreciated the support from them. But also, I don't know if you've had a chance to listen yet, Toby. We're recording this pretty quickly afterwards, but what a great bloke.
Yeah, I've not had the chance to listen to it yet. All I've heard is kind of you waxing lyrical about him. So I'll make sure that on my commute tomorrow I'll be listening to that on my way.
Definitely. And we usually will adopt a rookie or adopt a guy to make the team that may not be expected to make the team we want to get. I mean, I've already got mine sorted for the year. I really, really hope he sticks with the Angels.
What was the guy's name again?
Michael Peterson.
No, no, friend of the show,
Friend
Michael
of the
Peterson.
show. Thank you very much, Toby. I'll set you up. I knew where you were going with that. Excellent. Friend of the show, Michael Peterson. There we go. You heard it from Toby. He's the latest in a long line of friends of this show. But hopefully he makes the team out of spring and we get to see him in Anaheim. Toby, right. Let's let's talk some Angels baseball, shall we?
Shall
How
we start with the biggest news I think of to come out of the Angels from spring training? Mike Trout,
right field Mike Trout. I mean,
right fielder Mike Trout.
my thing on that was, and I said straight away, I don't care. I don't care where he plays. Centre field, right field, left field, first base, wherever it is. If he's on the field and Mike Trout is playing baseball, it's a good day. And that is all I care about. And we've been saying for years, haven't we, that this move to a corner was coming. Clearly, the strain on his body, whether that is playing centre, it's probably not, right? It's probably not playing centre. But whether there's that extra 5% that comes from playing centre and the strain on the body that's causing these issues, fine. Give him a go in right. I think he's probably better suited out there to right than he is to centre at this stage of his career anyway. Not like he was a premium defender at this point. Still good, but he wasn't that elite level anymore. So yeah, I'm happy. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with it. Obviously, you tweeted about how happy you were to see, kind of just happy to see Mike Trout in the field. And one of my favorite replies to that was seeing Mike Trout in the field will be my favorite month of the year. And I think at this point, it's kind of fair that you
Yeah.
can't guarantee his health. It doesn't matter where he's played. They mixed in a bit of DH for him last year as well. Didn't really seem to make much difference. And traditionally, Mike Trout has been worse as a DH. And when he's played outfield, kind of, I guess, rhythm and kind of having that constant time out in the field and then back in the dugout. So yeah, as long as he's kind of managing his body and staying healthy, like you say, it doesn't matter to me. As long as he's at the plate and kind of back to somewhat of his best, I don't care if he gives up loads of runs in the outfield because of what he brings to the Angels as a presence, as a batter, it just kind of usurps anything he'll ever do in the field for me.
Yeah, I agree. Although I feel like you're a bit, I don't know, I'm just checking the time, how long we've been recording for. That was a bit too early for the negative energy to creep in. Like, I know it's going to come at some point over the next month, but about 4 minutes in, let's pretend that Mike Trout this year is going to stay healthy. There's no need to worry about all these niggling injuries and everything that's disrupted his career for the last 3, 4 years. This year, we get healthy Mike Trout. He bounces back. It's an MVP caliber season, and the Angels go on a roll.
If we get a healthy Mike Trout, he is an MVP finalist. I feel like that is a thing. He's going to be top three, top five.
Yeah, but unfortunately, you're right, and there's not a chance he plays the full year. Apologies for that. Apologies for that. But yeah, big news out of camp straight away, wasn't it? We knew it was coming. They kind of teed it up. Ron teed it up, and then Mike spoke to us. But either way, looks in great shape. Always loves baseball. Again, on the podcast with Michael Peterson yesterday, he he said like what a great guy Mike is around the clubhouse. He's the first one to come in and introduce himself, the first one to go and say. Apparently, he went up to Peterson and was just like, "Hi, I'm Mike." And he's like, "Yeah, I know you're Mike. You're like the biggest superstar of the last 10 years in this sport." But he's humble. He loves it. He loves the Angels. He wants to win. He's healthy. We've just got to hope we get more of the old Mike rather than the new Norm that we're used to.
Yeah, you talk about his kind of his commitment and his love for baseball and the team. Um, I guess that kind of segues on nicely to, I guess, the other big bit of news to come out of the Angels training camp in that someone who's not going to be playing this year.
Oh. Dun dun dun.
I mean, it's not really much of a surprise because he's hardly played anyway, but Anthony Rendon is having surgery and will miss the entire year. What are your thoughts on this? Let's you go first.
I mean, I actually said last season, I don't think he ever plays for the Halos again. Like after the last injury, I still stick by that. There's not a chance that Anthony Rendon wants to play baseball anymore, needs to play baseball anymore, wants to be on the field. I think the Boris comments, I don't know if you saw them a few weeks ago, were telling in the sense that he knows how to do deals with teams so that money can, Rendon is guaranteed this money. There's no way out of it. But say Rendon wants to retire at some point during this season, the Angels can pay him out, but in a way and structure that suits us now. Maybe we get back 15, 20 million next year to spend. Rendon will get that money over a lifespan and it's happy days. The only concern I have with that is so eminently sensible that you're sitting there thinking, yeah, why don't the Rendon and the Halos do that? Artie Moreno. That's the one problem we have with this. In the man doesn't like deferred money. He doesn't like pushing stuff down the line. Whether he'll do that for Rendon, I think, is questionable, or whether he sees it as an opportunity with selling the team in a few years' time that he can push the money and not have to pay it now. What do you think about him?
One thing I did also see is that the Angels and kind of this came down from Artis Moreno. They didn't put any injury insurance on any of their contracts. So if you put an injury insurance on a player and then he's out for the year, you can then claim that money back as part of the insurance. And Artis Moreno didn't want to do it because it cost too much money.
Yeah, there was no chance
So
he was ever spending that money on top of a 38 million a year contract, though. I mean, realistically, I never expected us to have insurance. And actually, I think it's getting less common across the game just because it's getting so expensive. Contracts are so expensive.
yeah, I just think that if you sign a deal and you have your insurance, you can then claim that back, and then you don't kind of have, that doesn't come off your payroll then. So other than this 38 million, we're paying Anthony Rendon to sit at home and recover from this injury, or potentially recover, or just never play again. Whereas if you got the insurance, it's kind of the insurance is kind of paid out, and then the Angels claw back kind of a significant percentage of his contract. But obviously, Artemio doesn't want to pay it because he thinks it's too expensive, and I think he would have been smart to the amount of injuries that the Angels have had the last couple of years. You think about the kind of the big player the big contracts that we've had and all the injuries we've had, it kind of makes sense to kind of a guy like Robert Stevenson, who they signed to a 16 million a year deal, who's not even pitched yet, paid him 16 million to not be there. So yeah, it's just kind of the amount of injuries now. I think it's kind of silly not to have insurance, just to because you don't want to be, like I say, you don't want to be paying players to not play for you.
I think in an ideal world, you're right, but I just think the reality of the costs are there are very few owners in baseball that would be willing to extend what was a ridiculous contract in the first place and then add millions and millions on top of it. But Renda, let's be honest, right? As a fans, we frustrated. Like he's a big asset to the team. We spent a lot of money on him. He's the reason we're not able to put buy a pitcher, for example. Artie said it himself. It's why we weren't able to get a frontline ace that was on the market because he can't commit the money because the money's committed to Rendon. So as fans, we are highly frustrated with the Rendon situation, his lack of care, his lack of appearances on the field. But as a person, you got to just take a step back from it, right? He's not asking to have double hip surgery. He's not asking for his body to fail him and fall apart. And that's the empathetic side of me does say, like, at the end of the day, it may be more frustrating for us as fans, but think about him and like his lifestyle now and the surgeries. It must be totting up. And that's why retirement is the best option, I think, for everyone.
Yeah, one of the interesting stats that I dug out myself actually is that there was a nice one that
Humble
since
brag.
Rendon signed, they'd used I think it was something like 29 different third basemen since Rendon signed the contract. They've used more third basemen than Rendon has hit home runs since he signed the contract.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, his lack of, I mean, he had one half good season for us, right? The COVID season where he pretty much was healthy for the whole thing. And that's it. And that was 50 something games he played. The rest of the time he's played. I saw the stat the other day. It's about 40 or 50 games every single season he's been here, which is just telling and not good enough. But that's what happens when you pay a high-priced free agent that's coming off a World Series win who doesn't particularly like baseball to begin with, unfortunately. You kind of, especially when you go for Garrett Cole, you put up a lot of money bidding for him, supposedly, miss out, understandably, and then you chuck the money at the next best thing. That's not the way to do business, is it?
No, and I think the negativity should end there, and we should bring it back into positive spin. The Angels did make some moves. Did make some moves in the offseason. A lot of the business was done early, so I think a lot of people might have forgotten who they actually signed and kind of because it all seemed to be quite soon after the World Series ended that they made a couple of moves. So I think we should try and
Yeah,
try and
so
bring positivity back
well,
and
I was,
talk
I
about
was
them.
going to say, I mean, we're moving into spring. We're looking at the roster now. You got Jorge Soler, who's probably the big splash to start the spring. The trade for him. Travis d'Arnaud came in to back up catch, and that catching room with Hoppy and d'Arnaud should be pretty electric. You got Cole Hendricks that came in as the vet. You got Johan Mancada and Kenley Jansen that have just come in recently. Both like, I mean, with Kenley, you could not ask for a better guy to be there, both for save opportunities this season as he approaches records, but also just to mentor Ben Joyce. You couldn't ask for more than that. Mancada, like, very promising early in his career, really highly touted prospect, had a exceptional year a few years back. Injury bug has kind of caught him, but at 5 million and as a backup, you're gambling in a positive way. I think there's a lot there to work with. Then you got people like Kevin Newman came in, who I think was quite an underrated utility signing. That I think Perry managed to sneak in there and get him on a very team friendly deal, and I think he'll do a lot of things for this team this year. So they're kind of the big splashes, aren't they? In case, unless I've missed anyone obvious.
Yeah, you have. You've missed the big free agent signing the Angels made, Yusi Kikuchi, the pitcher who's kind of going to be the frontline guy. And I really wasn't enamored by the signing because, and you can forgive all Angels fans for this because I'm like I've never seen this guy pitch well. Obviously, only watch the Angels, so I went and searched it, and he has 13 appearances against the Angels with a 2-4 record and an ERA of over 8.
His
So any
record in
Angels fan can
Anaheim,
be forgiven.
particularly, right?
They can be forgiven for not thinking he's a good signing, but he's actually a really good pitcher, and I didn't realize this because I've never seen him pitch well against the Angels. So I'm sure he's glad to not be pitching against the Angels because he never seems to do well. So yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully, if he's not playing against them, he's going to do well for them.
My recollections of him always as well, just getting smashed around in Anaheim. But we just got to hope he turned the corner last year in Houston. They added a bit. They changed his repertoire, didn't they? They made him They made him throw different pitches and this and that, and incredible results. He had a good time in Toronto, although he was like a number four guy in Toronto, and he's coming into the Angels to be a number one, as Ron Washington put it the other day. I still think there's a lot of question marks over that rotation, even with Kikuchi coming in. But he certainly was a welcome piece. And you look at the price as well, compared to a lot of the pitching that went this offseason. It can't really argue with the price we got him for. Um, but what are you looking for out of some of those hitters that have come in then? So Darno, Soler, Newman, Moncada, what do you think in terms of the potential for them to add to the Halos lineup? Because I think it was quite hit and miss last year. We actually they came into the year, didn't they, saying they wanted a slugger and more power, and they got Soler early. They seemed like they wanted another guy and didn't get it. Do you think we've got enough there in the lineup to be a consistent run scoring unit?
I don't think so. I think adding one guy is kind of not really enough, nor it will be. The Angels clearly needed more than one guy, and they haven't been able to get it. So I think that he will make a difference, but as kind of a power hitting guy, and obviously the league in general has gone to more kind of home run hitting, I think that it will add a bit, but I don't think it'll add enough. And especially because they want him to play in the outfield and kind of DH a bit. He's one of the worst defenders in the league. So I think that will that make up for, well, will his hitting make up for his lack of defending? I'm not sure. And will it push over the edge? No. The Angels, they could make a splash. Some of the young guys could make a step forward. But when you're banking on that happening year on year and the kind of the young guys getting better and kind of bringing some more young guys through, obviously, hopefully, we might get to see Simo a little bit, Christian Moore this year. So hopefully it happens for us. But kind of I'm on the fence a little bit with just getting kind of Solarian really to be in the lineup.
I agree. I would have liked another bat. And I said all along, I was really excited by Pete Alonso, for example, and I got all the reasons why it was a bad idea, but just that excitement and having a 40 home run hitter in the line in the middle of our lineup, I think would have been great in Anaheim. Um, but that's not just what I think we do have to be aware of is those young guys we had in there last year. They should, all being well, if the Halo's development and the plan is working, if there is a plan, but let's pretend there is a plan. If it's working, they should be better this year, right? I hope he got tired last year, understandably. He tried to catch every game. He tailed off down the end. Shanuel, I thought, looked good in the second half last year, was very much coming on. I think he did better than many people were expecting. You got to see bigger things for him this year. Renhefo, if he hadn't got injured, was on pace for all sorts of his records. He hit 300. He stole like 24 bags, 26 bags, something like that. He was looking good in that lineup. Hopefully, a healthy Trout. Taylor Ward had his really good spells at the start and end and slumped massively, but you got to hope that we just see a bit more consistency through the year. I think this lineup is fairly deep. I think there is a possibility that Ron could get this lineup firing if they're running the bases better. Like last year, we stole a lot more bags than we were used to in previous years, I think, but the base running wasn't good. It was one of those weird things, wasn't it? It was fine to be aggressive, but we made so many mistakes in the base pass, so they got to get that right. But I am optimistic, I think, about where the hitting is right now, that you could see more consistency this year, just as they have more experience in the league.
Yeah, that's kind of obviously the hope. And then obviously you got people like Zach Neto who's had surgery in the off season, so he should hopefully be healthy early on in the season. Obviously, Joe Adele started to kind of show a little bit of promise as to kind of what everyone thought he would be. So there's potential for him. I think he has been tipped to move to centre as well between him and Moniak. They've obviously both played quite a bit of centre, and Joe Adele was a right field Gold Glove finalist, so they're hoping that that can move to centre and he can replace Trout. So there is a little bit of potentially some sneaky, like you say, some sneaky kind of pop in the lineup.
We'll we'll get to this later into the spring when we talk about it properly, but I'm going to put on record now. I have absolutely zero faith in Joe Adele and Mickey Moniak to be consistent everyday contributors. I just, I honestly thought Mickey was a DFA candidate to start the off season, and it hasn't panned out that way. We obviously haven't made any reinforcements really in the outfield, so both him and Adele now have this huge opportunity with Trout's move. Um, but I'm not confident. I think that's going to be a weak spot in the lineup all year. But with a centre fielder, if Adele can translate his improved right field defense into centre, and we know Mickey's not a bad defender either. I mean, you can carry that as long as you're getting. Well, you to be honest, you need elite centre field defense, and whether either of those two can deliver that, I don't know. But we'll see. But I'm just putting that on record now. My confidence levels in them are lower than they are in quite a lot of others in this team. As
That's
we're in
interesting.
as we're in spring, Toby, what are you looking out for these first few weeks? I mean, everyone, I mean, I do, we all do it, and we pretend, great, spring's back, baseball's back. Yeah, spring training is boring. Like, it is boring. It's a long month. You just want it over with and get to the real stuff. But let's just pretend it's not boring. I think it's better if you're there. So, for those people that do like spring, like, I get it. If you're sitting in the sun in Arizona, fine. When you're sitting in your London flat in gloomy -2 degree weather and rain, less interesting. Anyway, back to the point. What are you actually looking out for in spring? What are the things that you want to see happen?
I'm looking for some of the young guys to take some more steps. So, like we were talking about with kind of people like Shonowell and Christian Moore potentially as well, to see if they can kind of break through. There was obviously talk about him getting a call up to the majors at the end of last year. Didn't happen for him. So seeing how he looks, seeing how kind of just how the new guys are doing, and seeing if there is actually any progression. I think pitching wise, seeing who the rotation's going to end up being as well, because you've got kind of Kikuchi locked in and Anderson's locked in. Hendricks is probably going to form part of the rotation as well. And then you're looking at kind of the last two guys and who's going to, out of the young guys that they've got, who's actually going to fortify those spots, whether it's going to be Gahanowitz and Dana and Detmers and Silses and whoever. Who's going to claim those kind of last two or three spots in the rotation? So I think that's going to be an interesting watch and to read about and stuff as the spring progresses.
Yeah, I think that pitching battle for me is the interesting one, and I'm not. I don't love any of the options. I mean, I don't know if you saw any of last night. I mean, Detmers basically looked very similar to Detmers of last year, which is a slight concern. It's the first outing of spring. You can't read too much into it. Let's not try to, but it was concerning that the same pitches he was throwing, the same sequences. It just looked all very familiar and didn't go too well. Silthest the same, although coming off injury, so you got to expect that he's going to be incredibly rusty. But that back end of the rotation is very much up in the air for me, and I don't actually have a standout candidate. So spring, you're right, should be really interesting to see if anyone can secure that coming out of camp. The other one is the pen, and I think realistically, there are very few of those slots that have been locked up, and I think there is a fair bit to play for with a lot of arms coming in, and it was one of the strengths last year at the back end. But what are you looking to see out of the way Perry constructs the pen this spring and the arms we've got in the camp?
Well, I think he's kind of proven that it's never really been that effective, kind of signing all the guys to one of deals and kind of just trying to throw as much money at the wall that you hoping some of it sticks. I think they've got 7, 8, 9 locked up in Joyce and Janssen.
Yeah.
And they're hoping Joyce can kind of be stretched out to two, but I think he's probably better as just doing the eighth inning and then putting Janssen in for the ninth or kind of seventh and eighth, just kind of one inning at a time. And then you're looking kind of who can be setups for the setup guys. And kind of there's a few guys who can potentially kind of get in there and do a job, but it's kind of going to be the same as any year. There's going to be so many guys that filter through that you're just never going to know who's going to actually kind of take those spots consistently.
Yeah, and that is one of the things. I think you're right. We have thrown quite a lot of money at some pretty average relief pitchers over Perry's tenure, and it just hasn't gone well. You forgot obviously Stevenson, who hopefully will be back in June as well. And if they can get, you got to temper expectations off of major surgery, but you can get Stevenson back in there as a seven potentially, or 7, 8, 9 looks pretty strong at the back end of a pen. If those boys can get us a lead, that is, which is the next question mark.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised though, because obviously we've had Estevez, the kind of the first half of last year until the trade deadline, and then kind of the year before that. And what did he go like 21 of 21 in a row for saves?
Oh
So he was
yeah,
the Angels were kind of in leading opportunities at the start of the year. So kind of there's always that potential, and you just need the guys to do it. So even though the Angels were kind of, I guess, a bad team last year, they still had plenty of save opportunities. So they will come, and it just depends on the guys. Regarding kind of Janssen, the kind of I immediately thought, who's he going to be flipped for at the deadline when the Angels signed
yeah.
him? So Unfortunately, that's kind of how I perceived it. And I think honestly, Stevenson could be a candidate as well. If he's healthy by the trade deadline and the Angels aren't very good, it might be a case of who can they flip for him.
Possibly, but Stevenson still has another year afterwards, and the Angels still pretend they're trying to compete, don't they? So we'll see. You're right. We'll have a better picture by the deadline, and hopefully we see an improved Angels team. Um, but I think if there's signs of life in this team, someone like Stevenson would stick around. So they wouldn't trade him because they are looking to start winning with this young core at some point, and hopefully Rendon off the books after next year or potentially earlier. So fingers crossed they get to a place where we are looking more positive and we are looking ahead. What do you make of the Artie Moreno situation at the moment? He did do a big interview, didn't he, at the start of spring and said lots of stuff and actually some self-reflective things that I haven't heard from him before in terms of the team. Still doesn't want to sell or doesn't have any imminent plans to sell, which was a shame, I think, to most of us. But what did you make of Artie's comments and where the team is currently with him?
I think it's just trying to find any kind of excuses for his poor ownership, really, and kind of openly saying the Angels are going to lose money this year, and there's only really one person to blame as to why the Angels are going to lose money this year, and it is the owner. So he's trying to kind of get people to feel a little bit sympathetic for him and kind of all this. And I don't think it really worked, and it doesn't didn't resonate with the fans. Definitely didn't resonate with me anyway.
Yeah.
Took everything he said with a bit of a pinch of salt because he's not really been that open with the media. So I feel like when he is, you do have to listen, and also you have to kind of, like I say, take everything with a pinch of salt and just think, what's he doing it for? Because I feel like because he's so selective with the media, there's always an ulterior motive. And
Mm.
I do think it was to try and get a little bit of sympathy and get some people off his back and go, look, we're going to lose money. I'm not going to willingly invest money if we're already going to lose kind of 20 to 30 million. So it's kind of justifying his lack of spending, I think, more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with your take. I think that's probably right. Certainly, it was some PR moves included in those comments, and I did have, and maybe it's worked on me a little bit. I mean, I don't have sympathy per se because I think his leadership as an owner of this team has been pretty shambolic for the last decade. But there are certainly elements outside of his control and things where the team has struggled through injuries, through he has spent money. It's not necessarily been money spent in the right place, but as he said, things like Mike Trout constantly being injured, which was a slight dig, I thought, which was a bit weird, but Rendon being injured, some of the pitching injuries. There's like he is at fault largely, but there's certainly elements of it where you could argue that he does have a point, and any team would probably struggle with superstars getting injured like that. But then again, that is the way we were built, which is superstars and scrubs, compared to a lot of teams which put money into development, put money into minor league system that have that little conveyor belt of talent coming through, which the Halos just haven't had for quite a long time. So, whilst I say I've got a bit of sympathy for that argument, possibly not. And you're totally right on the money thing as well. There was absolutely no need to come out and tell the world that he was losing 50 million this year. Zero need to tell anyone that. That was a purely self-promotional, look at me pumping money into this. And that is because he had the Atani gravy train and he lost it ultimately. And he got used to those incomes from the Japanese markets and he lost them. He fumbled the bag by not committing to this team and putting the right money in the right places when we had that global phenom on our team. R.I.P. Shohei.
One kind of piece of true positivity, because this has actually no negative connotations whatsoever, true positivity. How good does the minor league, or sorry, the spring training complex look in Arizona? That is the one thing coming into this year that I'm like, wow, they actually are doing something for the future rather than doing things for now, because that looks seriously impressive.
Absolutely sensational. And Michael Peterson on the pod yesterday just confirmed it, said it was the best he's ever seen in terms of the number of fields that are available. He said, like, you can basically do a workout and do a live and have nobody else around. There's no crowding. He's just said it's like the facilities are second to none. So, yeah, finally, we've got something good. I know they're planning to upgrade the stadium next year as well, Tempe Diablo, and hopefully for fans going to spring next year, they'll see those upgrades. Stadium is still a sore spot. I know we extended the lease, didn't we, for 3 years to 32 in Anaheim. Basically, Artie said he'll do superficial updates, but not going to spend any real money on it. We've both been there fairly recently. We know it's in a pretty poor state. Especially if you've had a chance to visit any other ball clubs, you'll know that Angel Stadium is not in a great condition in comparison. So it's a shame that we're still in this almost like dilemma, isn't it? Of what does he do with it? And nobody really knows where it's going to end up.
Yeah, it's kind of a bit of a state of limbo. You kind of because he doesn't want to put any money in it when it can potentially only be there for the next kind of 7 years. And then they're also almost trying to play a game of chicken with each other in terms of him and the city to kind of say, oh, kind of who's gonna move first kind of thing. Because he's only ever gonna do enough to make it serviceable rather than actually improve it because they might not be there in 7 years' time.
Yeah, and he might not be either. And I think that's the point. He doesn't want to pump more money in, does he? When likelihood is he does sell the team in the not too distant future. So we are going to be stuck in that state of limbo, as you say, for a while, I feel, particularly with the relationships with the city as well. And I know the city haven't been particularly keen to invest their own taxpayer money into the Angels and into an owner who is pretty wealthy as it stands. But we'll wait and see. Anyway, Toby, final thoughts, because this is just spring training. Not much has happened so far. We're going to get as we get through the spring and into the start of the year, we'll obviously get into a lot more greater depth with some of these players and what we want to see. But any final thoughts as we head into this week of spring?
No, I'm just looking forward to seeing how they go, seeing how guys progress, and just kind of we'll probably hopefully do another episode in a couple of weeks, kind of maybe halfway through spring, just to see where we get to in terms of probably do a deep dive into the roster a bit more than we have done today. So no, it was a nice soft introduction back, and yeah, looking forward to the season ahead.
Yeah, this is the only time of year you can say that. So very excited for Halo's baseball. Not so excited for the sleepless nights to begin again. I got very accustomed to sleep finally, so it's gonna be a massive shock to the system when that comes back.
Yeah, for sure. And any kind of YouTube watchers out there who have noticed, I've decided that I'm not going to cut my hair the length of it until the Angels make the playoffs. Hence why it's kind of tied up in a nice bun. So that's kind of what I've decided. So that's going to be what's on them. So kind of you might see me at the end of the year. It's going to be kind of down quite far. So yeah, that'll be a progression throughout the season.
Oh, that is not something you should have committed to. Oh, it's been 10 years.
But it's just been going, started it kind of pretty much last season. So,
Yeah.
I'm a year into it now.
Well, if you don't want to stay tuned for anything else, just stay tuned for the hair progress. That's what I would say.
That'll keep the retention going towards the end of the season.
Precisely. Well, thanks, Toby. Thanks, everyone listening. If you haven't subscribed yet, go hit that button. Obviously, this is on all your favorite platforms or on YouTube now. Putting the videos on Spotify, so you should be able to see our faces. Unfortunately for you, as the season goes on and on. But great to talk to you, Toby. Looking forward to hopefully a more successful Angel season. But either way, we're going to stick with it and commit to these.
Yeah, aren't we all? Aren't we all? It'll be good to see how it goes.
Absolutely. Go Halos.